we're recording. So thank you for joining me today, Frank. I'm really excited about this. And I think you have really something to give back to people. And so I know you offered to do an interview, and I know I kind of chased you and terrorized you. And I'm just glad you said yes, because I think this is going to be good and be a lot of fun. So thank you for the time, because I know you're busy and have a lot going on.
No,
Tell me a little bit about just yourself, your business, and kind of what's going on with you today with your team and in real estate.
Okay. Myself and my business, I've been licensed since 1999, taught by who I feel is one of the best, not only in the business, but in life, certainly my hero. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot about how to be a realtor, and I am now learning what it takes to run a team and run a business. So over the past 12 years, it's been quite a learning lesson for me as we've tried new things. And of course, 12 years ago, we were coming out of quite a market. So evolving into this next phase in the market, life, and business has been, again, a little bit of it's been a lot to learn. But it's been fantastic. I'm fortunate enough to have still a ton of support. My mother's still in the office with us, cracking the whip, making sure we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. I have a phenomenal team. I think I have, one of the best assistants anybody can ask for, Kathy, she's family. We love her so much. And we have Tom Wirt on our team, who's an incredible manager. And we just have, a team of just great newer agents that are eager to learn, eager to go out there and chase their dreams, set their goals, and just going to be more fortunate.
Well, and you're modest because you're doing a phenomenal business too. The volume that you're doing is huge for what's there, and you're always modest. Your dad was always modest, just kind of the Franks, the Napolis of the world, right? So what was it like growing up with your dad when you were little? Tell me about that, what you learned, what he instilled in you, what he insisted upon. I can only imagine. I'd love to learn.
My dad, growing up, and he told me this later, so this is kind of the best way to summarize it without going on for an hour, but my dad said later on in life, after I learned more about his approach, was that it was his job to be father first, friend second. And, we definitely had, we had a great life together, but he was definitely hard on me. And, growing up, I didn't quite understand it. They gave me enough slack for me to go out there and learn a little bit on my own. But he made sure to tighten the ropes when he saw that I was getting a little out of hand. And that was, some of the way he did that was the best way he could have raised me. He made sure that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, focusing, learning my lessons, but also made sure to keep me on the path. And, later on in life, our relationship actually grew even more as we started working together, and we went through a couple other things together. He was my best friend. He was my mentor, and still to this day, someone that I rely on all the time for information. So I was very fortunate to have him in my life.
Yeah. So why did you get into real estate? Was it something you knew you were always going to do, or why real estate?
I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And I decided that it was the summer of between junior year and senior year in high school. My mother wanted to take the real estate test because she was working with my dad at the time, helping him with office things. I figured that I would just go to real estate school with her, and that I would get my license, or I'd at least pass the test or take schooling at 17 years old. And then once I turned 18, I would take the test and get my license, which is what I did. And I started going to school. I was going to UNLV, and I really had no idea what I was doing there. I was just taking my core classes, and I was going to do real estate on the side while I was going through school. But I got that taste early on. I fell in love with the business, and I negotiated with my parents to say, look, I know you wanted me to go to school. I said, but I love real estate. Political science isn't really teaching me anything right now. I'm young enough to where I can go real estate full time. If it works out, great. If not, I'm young enough to go back to school. And never went back to school from that point. Real estate was my career. I quit the business for 2 days in the 20 plus years that I've been in the business. I was always interested in the casino business because I'm born and raised in Las Vegas. So I quit for 2 days. I had someone that gave me a good position in a casino so I could see how it worked. But they told me what time I had to be there. They told me what I had to wear. They told me me what I had to do, and I can only make X. So the 2 days that I was there, I was calculating what I can make for myself versus working for someone else. And I went back to real estate, never looked back.
Okay. We're losing you a little bit. I don't know if our Wi-Fi is not connecting. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Frank, you're frozen. You might need to hop back on. Can you hear me now?
I'm sending him a quick chat as well, Debbie.
Okay. I think he's in the ridges and just the Wi-Fi there sometimes isn't great. He looks like he's coming back. Can you hear me, Frank? Oh, maybe he'll come back in and dial back in. Gotta love Zoom, right? It's great when it works, and then sometimes it doesn't. I was on something the other day and I ended up running to my router and shutting everything down and restarting because I couldn't hop on. So while we're waiting for Frank, I can share kind of a little bit of some of the things that I'm seeing that's happening out there and some things maybe for people to be aware of. There's, it's interesting now, the PPP money was released again, and I've never taken money for the government, but this is kind of a different time. And so what we did is we were lucky enough to talk to Joe Amato at SBA, and he ended up hooking us up with somebody who's lending nationally. And we just, we did a Zoom call yesterday with her, and they have still money that they're giving out, and it's in the Pivot Shift Facebook group. There's Frank. He might be back. Yeah, he looks like he's there. Can you unmute yourself? You're muted still. Let's see if we can get you. There you are.
All right.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we were just kind of talking about growing up and your dad's getting started in real estate and what that looks like. And you were saying, what I heard was that you had another job for 2 days, and that was just as much as you could handle when you heard that you had a ceiling on what you could do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that was when I really realized the beauty of real estate. And my dad always just said, you know, real estate's not a job, it's a career. And that's when I finally understood what that meant. And I realized at that point that I would never want to go back to working for someone else again. And that all the effort that I would put in on a daily basis would be towards something that I grew, something that I owned, and something that I could be proud of.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And so I think a lot of people will think that, you know, your parents were in the business, you got in the business, everything just got handed to you, right? It was on a platter and it was easy and you didn't have to work at all. Was that the case?
That was the exact opposite. You know, I will say this. One thing I was given was a tremendous opportunity, and I was given tremendous amount of love. I was given a tremendous amount of support, and I was given a tremendous education, which to this day I'm extremely grateful for, because without all those ingredients, I would never be able to do what I do today. But my father was especially hard on me. My splits were never more than anybody else's, and they were more times than not less. I never got the big deals. He would give me the hardest ones to work on. He would make sure that I had the buyers that wanted to go shopping on the weekends. He made sure to train me for the marathon with 25-pound weights around my ankles. And again, to this day, I'm extremely grateful for that, because I would not have the mindset and the work ethic that I do, versus someone that might have been given every opportunity, and maybe someone that was trained to believe that what we do is easy. And again, I received a tremendous opportunity because of him. But he definitely taught me the right way.
I remember talking with him when you were growing up and teasing him about that, because he would tell me stories and it was like, oh yeah, he's gonna do that. He's gonna work on that. Share with me, Frank, because you've had a lot of adversity in your life. And I think sometimes people look at you and think it was just simple, right? It's just a path and you sailed on it. I remember your dad always he had an open door and he'd help anybody. He'd talk to anybody. He was just so willing to kind of give back and communicate to help those around him. And we were visiting one day and he was sharing with me a story about what happened to you when you were 22. Will you share that with us?
It was, well, there were a couple things during that time. Was it the car story or the snowboarding story that he shared
The
with you?
car story is what I was looking for.
So that was my first, one of my first big moments, scary moments in life. I was 22 years old. I had just got started in the business, meaning I just started to do somewhat well in the business. And my goal was to get this new vehicle that I thought was going to be an amazing real estate vehicle. But it just so happened that vehicle happened to be one of the most stolen vehicles during that time. And I hit my goal. I treated myself and got my car. But one night, someone wanted it a little more than I did, and decided to hold me up at gunpoint, jump in the backseat of the car along with me in it while I was driving, put the gun to my head and had me start driving him. Now it was myself and another friend of mine, but he was in the back seat and he had great, range behind us, and pretty much had us under his control.
His arm around your neck, you told me. It sounds terrible.
He had his arm around my neck, put the gun in my head, and start driving. So I had no choice at that point than to drive wherever he wanted us to go. This was at the Luxor Hotel. He had me back out of my parking spot. He had me get on the I-15 heading north, and he just had me drive. And this was probably, I don't know, maybe 12 o'clock in the morning. I'm passing cars on the freeway. I'm passing cop cars. And the whole time, I'm trying to think of my exit strategy with this guy. Is it crash the car? Is it crash into a cop car? Is it slam on the brakes, try to take the gun from him? I had someone in the car with me. So the whole time I'm not only thinking about, how to do this, but, if I do something and it causes my friend to get killed, how am I going to feel about that? So I relied on my ability to communicate. I tried to befriend this person and to try to change the tone of the situation, become more helpful. And, I thought I was doing okay until we passed where the speedway is now. And I saw the last lights of the city and realized that we were heading out into the darkness. And then I started to get a little nervous because I'm far away from everybody. Why is he taking us all the way out here? And then, of course, other thoughts entered my mind. And he had me get off on the Apex exit. He had me head west, and he had me take him into the middle of the desert out by the rock quarry that's out there, which is far from anything. And when we got off the freeway and he had me start driving through the desert, he got on the phone and said he was coming. So clearly we were off to meet more people. I had spent from the Luxor all the way to this point, which is, and he had me drive the speed limit. I couldn't speed, so I was maybe, 30 minutes in the car with this guy. And I felt like I might have developed enough of a relationship with this guy to where things could be okay. But once I heard that we were off to meet more people, there was going to be no time for me to try to communicate with them, and whatever they wanted to accomplish was going to be what was going to happen. And that's when I got really nervous.
Rightfully
We got,
so.
yeah,
Wow.
it was scary. We got out there and we pulled off on the side of the road, or I'm sorry, we were in the desert and we pulled off into this little area. And fortunately, no one was there. And we waited there for a little bit. He had my friend and I get side by side next to each other. And he stood there with the gun on us. And he kept on looking at his phone, kept on looking at his phone. And we were out there for maybe about 15, 20 minutes before he decides to come up behind me, put his hand on my shoulder, and put the gun up behind my head. And he had us stand there with our arms out. And apparently his guys weren't showing, but he had to do what he had to do. So at that point, I, of course, teared up, and I was worried about how my family was going to react to this, how long it would take for them to find me. And then, of course, I was wondering if it was going to hurt. And I remember I definitely lost it. And I began to plead with this guy and pretty much beg that he didn't do it. And I started to feel him kind of shaking. So you could tell he was thinking about this. And sure enough, he pulled the gun away from my head. He jumped in the vehicle. He started it up. He turned it around and tried to run my friend and I over. My friend and I split and went in different directions. He couldn't shoot me, but he could have run us over. So my friend and I split and went in different directions. He took one charge at us, jumped on the road, and took off. And I'll finish this story quickly, but there was a cool little part of the story that I'll never forget. We had to walk all the way through the desert back to the I-15. And if you've ever seen that rock quarry out there, it's pretty far away. And there's a train track that runs through. And, you know, we were out to dinner and we were dressed nice and we're climbing over fences and, you know, getting to the freeway. We start hitchhiking, of course. We needed to get back into town. You know, we didn't have cell phones. He took everything we had. And I remember this 18-wheeler pulling over and stopping probably about 100 yards away from us. So we're excited. My friend and I are running towards this thing. We get about maybe 10 yards away. The guy takes off. So we're walking and I'm looking up and it says prison area, don't pick up hitchhikers, you know, because Indian Springs there, you know, so we're thinking we're going to have to walk all the way back into town. It's dark. You hear things in the desert, you know, it's probably like 1:30, 2 o'clock by this point. And sure enough, it must have been a 1985 Honda Civic or a Honda Accord pulls up next to us on the side of the road. And it's this young, might have been a 19-year-old girl, and her car was full of all her belongings. She was driving from Utah all the way to LA to go to school and wanted to beat the desert heat because she didn't have any air conditioning in her car. She pulls up, she moves all of her things from the back seat to the front of her car, and she says, hop in. So my friend and I jump in her car. She takes us to the Craig and the I-15, to the gas station right there, where my friend gets out. I get out and I walk over to her and I say, look, I said, I don't have any money to give you. I don't have anything other than a word of advice. I said, don't you ever pick up two guys in the middle of the desert ever again. And she said to me, what was that?
And have them sit in the back seat behind you.
Of course, yeah. Well, she thought that'd be safer, but no, that's a bad position to be in. But she said to me, she said she broke down in the middle of the desert one time and someone picked her up and got her to safety. So she wanted to pay it forward. So I said, look, you're dead. Don't ever do that again. And I thank you very much. And I'll never, ever forget that girl. I ended up, oh, did I lose you? Oh, there you are. I ended up getting on a payphone, calling my dad right away and saying, before I tell you the story, I want you to know that I'm okay, but here's what's just happened.
Wow.
There is a lot to learn from that story. Number one is always valet your car. Always go to well-lit areas, you know, try to be as safe and aware of your surroundings as possible. But that girl that did that for us and her desire to pay forward, you know, a good deed that someone did for her, you know, I kind of realized at that point that I was extremely lucky to get through that situation. And I wanted to make sure that I paid forward, not only just in one event, but, again, to show my gratitude to others for the rest of my life for being given that chance to be here on this planet still. And that was one. And then there
Wow.
were a couple more after that, but
That's interesting. And so that's a gang thing or something probably that was going on, and they just didn't get there at time, or who
so
knows, right?
this was, so the cops, of course, came and we actually found my vehicle. This was during Memorial Weekend back in 2002. And the cops said that there were some similar events that were going on, and that they think it was a gang that was here in town, or maybe somebody came from out of town, and this was part of an initiation process where they were carjacking and taking the people out. And
Wow.
yeah, it was quite an experience.
You've had a lot of those. And so that didn't hold you back. And then less than 2 years later, you had another accident. That was an accident, really, right?
Yes. It's quite a trip down memory lane.
Got quite
um,
a story, Frank.
got some stories.
Mhm.
Well, it's the experiences in life that make us who we are. And side note on that, I always try to keep that in mind when I meet somebody, or when you see that person that might not be having a great day. You don't know what they've gone through in their lives. You don't know what they've gone through in that day. So I always try to be positive. I always try to help with a smile or something along those lines. You can't do it every day. Life is tough. But you need to be aware that that person that you met has X amount of years and hours and days and experiences behind them that brought them to this point. So you got to be mindful of that. But this story happened to be a story when I was, gosh, how old was I? It's January 11th, 2004. So I was 23 years old. I
Just turned 23.
just
Hmm.
turned 23. Yep. And I went on a snowboarding trip. I love sports. I've always been very athletic, and I was invited to go on a snowboarding trip, and I had the only SUV. I woke up that morning not wanting to go, but I had already committed to a couple friends that I would do it, and I had the only vehicle that could take us, so we would go snowboarding. Um, all I remember was getting a speeding ticket along the way. I remember buying my lift ticket, and I remember telling myself that I was going to take it very easy and just have a mellow day. Well, I might have changed my mind because they found me at the base of a jump at Giant Steps with a broken neck. And all I remember was waking up, seeing my sister, seeing my girlfriend at the time, and my lender at the time, all looking down on me, along with ski patrol and a small crowd of people. And I remember thinking, people are looking down at me. People are worried. Something must have happened. And I remember looking up and seeing that they were attaching me to a stretcher. And the paramedic that was attaching me to the stretcher said, "Frank, can you feel your legs? Can you move? Can you move your fingers?" And I remember not being able to do any of those things. And I remember telling myself, this is a very bad dream. Go back to sleep. And I did. I didn't wake up until 2 days later on a Tuesday in the hospital to learn that I had shattered my fifth vertebrae in my neck, and that I was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life without any movement from my shoulders down to my toes. Um, that was a lot to take in. 23, very active. I have been playing sports since I was 5 years old, competitive sports. That's just how I was raised. Love to be outside, very active person, and to find out that I might not be able to do those things ever again was tough. It was also tough for me to realize that not only did this affect me, but this was also going to affect my family, because my family was there with me at that time. And my father always warned me that if I didn't stop doing my sports and acting like an idiot, that he was going to feed me for the rest of his life. And the first night that he had to feed me was a real awakening. So I left Las Vegas. I went to Craig Hospital in Colorado, where they specialize in spinal injuries. And I went with
I
the
didn't know
prognosis.
that. Oh my gosh. My assistant that had the accident, that's where she went, was to Craig.
Craig Hospital.
Amazing.
Oh, amazing facility. And, I got lucky enough. One of my clients at the time, Joe Cortez, who's a boxing referee, has a daughter that was in a rollover accident, and she had the same exact injury that I did. And fortunately, during that time, she came in with the biggest smile on her face to explain to me what happened to her, how she adapted, and how she's loving and living her life right now. So that was extremely important to me to see that, because I thought my life was over. I also had a gentleman who's actually a realtor. His name's Rick Casper. He came in after he had an incident. He broke his neck also, which he recovered from it. So I had someone walk in that said, Frank, no matter what happens, your life is going to be okay. I had another person walk in to say, the doctors might be right, but it's up to you to decide if you want to listen to that and let that be the answer, or if you want to try to fight to have whatever improvements you can get. And those two people were very valuable to me. And I chose at that point to give it all I got, and I did. I moved to Craig Hospital. My father, you know how much he loves the business, and he wouldn't even let anybody answer his phone for him. He hands the keys to my mom, hands the phone to my mom, and says, I'm going with our son. And he left everything to be with me in Craig Hospital. He got an apartment right next to the hospital, and every single day he was the first person I saw in the morning. He was the last person that I saw at night. A little side note: during that time I was there, because I was there for 3 months, we had our best quarter ever with my mother running the business. Still to this day.
Funny, isn't it?
It's funny. It's funny. But everything worked out. I had him there by my side. His support, along with the support that I had here from a distance, really gave me all the motivation that I needed to fight hard daily, and to try not to get caught up in the reality of the situation, to try to not focus on, this is what could happen to me. This is what's happening to me. This is the changes. This is that. I had to try to focus on doing the exact opposite, because I knew that I had a smaller window of opportunity to recover from that, which fortunately I recovered. And, I'm so grateful that I had that time with my dad, because, we had 3 months of being together and just, being the best of friends. We, regardless of the situation, we had that time together, and looking back, so grateful that happened because of that. But during that time also, I learned some lessons that I don't think I could ever learn in life without going through something like that. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out and put yourself in that position, but I know that everybody that is watching this or will watch this is dealing with adversity in their lives, or has dealt with adversity in their lives. And while you're getting your butt kicked at the time, it's really hard to focus on or realize that there's going to be silver lining to this, or that there is something that you're going to take out of this that's going to help you in the future. But you have to go into every situation looking for that. You cannot be consumed by the adversity. You cannot give into it, and let that define who you are and the type of life that you're going to live. And that's probably one of the hardest things to do, especially while you're down and getting your butt kicked. But during that time, I learned those valuable lessons, and I'm telling you, things could always be worse. That dealer doesn't close, or that, that buyer that's running you ragged, or that, that seller that calls you daily wondering why their house hasn't sold, or whatever it is. All these little frustrations that we deal with on a daily basis, it could be worse. At least you have those frustrations to deal with. At least you have that buyer. At least you have that seller. This market that we are experiencing right now, although our market, I think, is fantastic right now, we dealt with 2008, and unfortunately 2008 washed a lot of people out of this business. You hold on to, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You could either hold on to the negativity and focus on, this is hard, this is difficult, it's going down, and you can go down with it, or you can focus on, how do you survive it? Okay. The goal should remain the same. I'm not adjusting my goals for the year, although we're facing some challenges. My agents aren't adjusting their goals. I didn't adjust my goals then, although I was facing some challenges. The goal remains the same. The process in which you get there is what has to change. Okay. And if you decide you want to change your goal to make the process to get there easier for you, then that's just going to be that's just how you choose to live your life. Okay. But you should never change that goal. You should adapt and evolve to whatever situation's thrown at you to make sure that you reach that goal. But I think that's why goal setting is so important. And with your company, and that's what I think I love about Keller Williams. I'm fortunate enough to have, friends in the business and such as yourself and friends in that company. You guys are very goal oriented and very driven. And, I've always been goal driven, but up until Tom in my office, he's never really, no one's really ever sat down to say, Frank, what is it that you want out of life? What is it that you want out of business? And by doing those things and making sure that I had clarity of what it is that I want, now I make sure that I find whatever path is going to get me there, easy or hard, no matter what.
It's funny, I was on a call this morning and that's what we talked about is get clarity, make a path to get there, and then take action. It's really those three things. It's that simple, and often people don't do it. You've been through a lot. And so how do you handle negative or just dark thoughts that are rolling around in your head? What do you do? How are you, like, you're lying in bed thinking you might not walk again? How did you get your mindset to the right spot?
I decided not to think about that. Truthfully, if you think dark, you will go dark. I fully believe in the law of attraction. I fully believe in manifesting what you think about. And all I did was focus on things that would bring my body back to normal. I've been playing drums. I've been playing instruments my whole life, but I started playing drums back in 8th grade. I still play drums to this day. And I tried to say, okay, don't think about you can't, because if you can't, you won't. This is what I want to do. So how do I get to that? And, truthfully, one of the first ways I got my leg muscle to flex and a finger to move was just by playing drum beats in repetition in my mind. Now, I wouldn't see the results because nothing was moving, although I knew that foot was hitting a bass drum, that one was hitting a cymbal, and this and that. And I was literally no movement. And that kind of goes into real estate. When you work on a farm, you're not going to get your results right away, but if you do it over time, repetition, over and over and over again, you will get results, but you can't expect them right away. And if I went to move something and it didn't move and I decided I was just going to give up, then I'd still be in that. I guarantee I'd still be in that exact situation, or I wouldn't be as far along as I am today. Some of the biggest rewards that you get in life take time and effort in going through negativity and dark times. But if you can find your way through it, again, by keeping a clear view or having clarity of what goal you want to achieve, then you're going to figure it out. You're going to say, you know what, that day was tough. What was tough about it? Where did I fail? Where did I not move the needle? And if you have that clear mindset, you're going to reevaluate your day and you're going to say, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to try something different. And you're going to do that until you get your result. And that's what I did during that time. And that's what I do now.
Love it. Love it. Those lights, it's all shaped you to get to where you are in that path. Let's shift for a minute and talk about your dad. He was probably the most respected man in Las Vegas real estate, I would say, and super humble and generous, and his door was always open. What takeaways do you have from him? What did you learn from him, Frank?
Well, I think when we spoke about this early on, I'm still learning from him to this day. And you just gave me the perfect example. Too often, we don't think about, how we're perceived. or the way, we affect other people's lives, which is why I talked about you never know what someone's gone through and you need to be aware of that. But I think that, what I've learned most from my father, aside from everything that he's taught me in the business, is, we're all going to leave a legacy. And while we're here, when we're gone, you need to be mindful, or you should be mindful about the mark you're going to leave and the impact that you're going to leave on others and on this earth, in this business, whatever it is. And what you just said about my dad, whenever I hear that from somebody, it melts my heart, but it also teaches me something. I want people to say the same thing about me and my team and the way that I conducted myself in the business and in life. And that encourages me to strive even further for greatness. And that greatness is not measured by how many homes we sell or how much money we make. It's about the type of person that we are to our family, our friends, our clients, to our fellow realtors. I think that that is probably the best lesson that he's still teaching me to this day. It's a good reminder for me.
Love it. Love it. And nothing better than that, because that affects everything around you, right? That's going to be your mark. I like that. It's good. So you guys have always done a ton of business. The market shifted, it crashed. I mean, I was smart enough to open an office in 2006, and then look at what came upon us. How did you get through that? And how did you come out the other side of that?
Well, we adapted with the market, and you did the same. You opened up, and right at one of the most difficult times we've ever experienced. But you I'm sure didn't have a business plan when you opened that was designed for the market that we went through at that time. No. So instead of saying, well, maybe this wasn't the right time for me, and giving up, you sat down, you adapted, you rewrote your business plan, and you moved forward. And I met with my agents again this morning. We do every Tuesday. We met at a park today, which was really nice to see them. But we realized then that our equipment, was not going to be suitable for the terrain that was going to be in front of us. And I love cars, I love off-roading, so I always try to relate the business or anything that's going on to something that's tangible for me, like an easy visual for me. And that's how I see it. Okay, what does our vehicle look like right now? And what is it designed to do? And you run it around that track. You time your lap every single time you go by to make sure that you're making adjustments to see if you can go even faster. Sometimes things break. You got to stop. You got to take it apart, put it back together. All right. But if I'm now going to go from track 1 to track 2, and it's different terrain, I need different things, then I have to break down my vehicle and re-equip it to handle the next terrain ahead of us. And that's how I look at our business. I evaluate all the time. I look at, our inner workings, our people, how we generate leads, what we're doing to close deals, our vendors, everybody that helps us. Fortunately enough, I have amazing partners in this business with Chicago Title that, without them, we would not be able to do what we are doing now. And that is one component of our machine that we have never had to examine. They have always been there for us. And I have other great partners like that as well. But we are constantly breaking it down and evolving and making sure that we're equipped to handle the markets. And that's what I told my team today. I said, look, it's going to be similar to 2008, not the market, but what happens to our realtor population. You told me, Mr. Blanchard said that, there are a lot of agents that have not renewed their licenses. And this is when things like that happen. But if you train now, and if you work harder now, not only will you do better than you did before you got into this market, you truthfully will, all right? Because you're going to do the work, you're going to figure it out. And when you do the work, things happen. It's impossible to not get results when you're doing the work, But once you get through this, after you train with the weights on your ankles, when the business gets easier, it's just going to be that much easier for you, and you will have more market share. You just have to figure it out during these times. And we meet twice a week, and I talk with my manager every single day, and we are consistently examining and making adjustments necessary within our team to address the market at hand.
Nice. So you got through that, and then in 2011, what happened?
In 2011, when the market went back to normal.
Well, what happened with your dad in 2011?
So we came out of that market, and of course, it was right in the middle of making those adjustments. And fortunately, my dad had some great ideas on how to attack that downturn in the market. We converted our office from a real estate office into a help center, literally. And I thought at that time he was absolutely crazy because we weren't making any money. We weren't making any money. We still had the expenses. And in order to do what my dad wanted to do, we had to market heavily for it. So we could not dip into company funds because those were pretty much gone. He dipped into his personal savings to fund this next business he wanted to go after. But the business model did not have a return at all. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you crazy?" And he said, "If you help enough people get where they need to go, you'll have no problems getting where you need to go. And we are going to devote all resources and invest our own money into making sure that anybody who's faced with a distressed property situation has a real place that they can go to for real information and real help versus going somewhere else where you're going to get charged for a loan modification, you're going to get charged for advice, you're going to get charged for a short sale, and then you're going to get charged for a bankruptcy." So we converted our office into a help center, kept our employees on, paid them, paid for advertising, and I'm watching the office start to fill up, but more money's going out, no money's coming in, and I still thought he was crazy. But sure enough, just as he said, you help enough people, it comes back. And those are, again, words that I'll never forget. But when he passed, we were still in the middle of that market. But like I just said, you work harder, you'll most likely do more business during those downturns than you did before when the market was a little easier. And I think we were doing literally double the units during that time than we are even today. Just because we were waking up, we were getting to the office by a certain time. And I remember my ex-manager that was working in the office with me at that time, we'd be in the office till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, having a blast writing deals. And during that time, you had to do double the units to get the volume. But we worked through that market and then transitioned into more of a normal market. But I think what you were maybe asking me was, what changed for me going from that time into now? And that's, my dad taught me how to be a great realtor, but one thing I had no idea about was how to run a team or run a business. And the last 12 years, that has been what I've been learning and working on the most. Looking at real estate as a business, whether you're an independent agent, a broker or a team leader, this is your business. You have to break it down that way and you have to look at it that way. Becoming someone that was relied upon for information and leadership, that didn't come right away, and I'm still sharpening that pencil. It's a big responsibility to be a source of information, and I have big shoes to fill based on the source of information that I grew up with. And I want to be that source and even better for those that count on me, such as my team, and anybody, of course, that would listen to me. So.
So how have you grown the business since then? Because it's bigger now than it's ever been.
We're growing. And, we mentioned the word legacy before, and having a why and having goals. And for me, of course, my dad's my why. And my goal is to take the business that he worked every single day for, and he did, and to not only keep it alive, but to grow it to the levels that he envisioned. If I was to just maintain the business, then I did him a disservice. I want to take it to that next level for him. And that's what drives me to do what we do today.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, it's powerful. So you shared with me something that I don't think many people know about you. We're all in this COVID thing, and a lot of people are just trying to put one foot ahead of another, and some people have their heads just stuck down and they're watching Netflix and not doing anything. You had something that happened to you in March, I think, that you shared with me. Will you share that with the group?
Yes. March 11th, I got a haircut and then went on a trip where I had to take 2 airplanes to get to where I was going, and I had to take 2 airplanes back. March 11th, I got a haircut. I came back to Vegas on March 16th. I'm a pretty healthy guy. I don't really get sick. I haven't had the flu since maybe high school, and maybe haven't had a cold for the last 3 years. On my way back to Vegas, I felt a little more tired than I normally do. When I got home, I felt very lethargic, didn't really feel like I was myself. And I was, of course, thinking maybe because I was watching so much COVID on TV that I was, maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But I had dinner on the 16th and realized that it tasted a lot different than it should. All I could taste was salt. I had a killer headache that would not go away. But again, just maybe felt like I was tired from traveling. The next day, my headache was still there. I had a sore throat, and then I had 0 taste buds whatsoever. I then developed a fever. I then developed chills, body ache, and a couple other symptoms, and I was sick. I was trying to just get through it at home. So I spent about a week with those symptoms, but my fever was getting worse and worse. I was around 102 for several days. I have a couple friends that are paramedics. They would check on me in the morning. We would do FaceTime. I was using Teledoc and going through my symptoms with the teledoctors, but it wasn't going away, and it was getting worse and worse. So I finally used home health care, or I forgot the name of there's an app where you can actually have nurses come to your house. And I did that. When they came over, my temperature was at 104 at that time. And they said my lungs didn't sound great, but they told me, if you can, stay home, see if you can get through it, because I was about 2 weeks into my fever at that point. I lasted a couple more days at home. I had a really bad dream. My dreams were very vivid and very dark. I had a very bad dream. I woke up next morning. I could not catch my breath. I could not even get up and walk into the next room without stopping every five steps and taking a break. I could only breathe laying flat on my back with my feet up. And I got on the phone with my paramedic friend, and he says, "You don't look good and you don't sound good. You need to go to the hospital." So sure enough, go to the hospital, ambulance comes, picks me up. I go to Sunrise Hospital. They tested me for flu. I didn't have the flu. They tested me for strep throat. I didn't have strep throat. They took me in and did x-rays on my lungs and a CAT scan on my lungs. And sure enough, I had full-blown pneumonia and a lot of damage to my lungs. So they admitted me immediately. They put me in isolation. And I was in the hospital for 5 days, 5 or 6 days. My fever broke, and they ended up letting me go out of the hospital. But while I was there, of course, I learned that I had COVID, and I had acute respiratory failure. In addition, caused by from the pneumonia caused by COVID, and it was a scary thing. And they only discharged me because my fever broke. My oxygen saturation was in the high 60s, low 70s percent when they took me in. When they discharged me, my oxygen saturation was in the mid 80s. But if I laid down at a certain angle, I can get to 89, 90. But because my fever broke, and this is when, kind of at the top of the curve, they needed more hospital beds. So they said, "We have to discharge you." Well, I couldn't call an Uber. I couldn't call family. I couldn't take a taxi. So I had a vehicle that was actually in the shop dropped off at the hospital. The nurse wheels me out to my vehicle, puts me in the car, and says, "Good luck." And they pretty much just said, "Because you don't have a fever, we have to send you away. But if you have to come back, come back." And that's how I got sent out of there. But, I only share that story because again, that was another scary thing. You know, you're in there by yourself. They have really no answers for you. They put me on drip IV and they put me on a Z pack, and that's what got my fever to break. But you can't see family, you can't see friends, and you have patients on either side of you that you can hear coughing and going through literally hell through that situation. It's a scary thing. But
So did you tell people around you at that time, or what did you do with your team and your business? What did that look like?
I barely let my mother know what was going on because I didn't want to scare her, because there was nothing she can do about it anyways. Although she knew I went to the hospital, but I made it sound like I was going there more to just make sure I was okay. My team manager, Tom, knew what was going on. But that didn't stop anything. You know, I think I was frustrated more than anything because at that time I thought, you know, there was going to be a bigger change in our market than there is. So I knew that we had to act quickly, and I was down for the count. And I was thinking, great, I'm not going to be able to stay ahead of this. You know, this is when I need to do what I need to do the most. And I was, of course, eager to get into it because I knew that we could benefit from this as a team if we got ourselves in the right position. But that didn't change me having our office meetings. We did our Zoom calls. I didn't use video. You know, I would do it from the bed. And Tom told me today that there was one meeting where I went to go. Obviously, you could tell I'm not very good with tech. You know, I don't know how to turn my videos on and my mute and all those things. And he told me that I had actually accidentally turned my camera on, and he could see me laying in the hospital bed giving the meeting, but he shut me off right away. But yeah, again, like I said,
The rest of your team didn't know.
I had one agent that saw it, and he texted me and said, dude, what's going on? Are you in the hospital? Are you okay? And I let him know what's going on. But today was the first day that I actually told my team that was happening. And I've been out of the hospital since April 1st or 2nd. So like I said before, the goal remains the same. And I knew that my team had to get instruction. And now more than anything, they needed me, or they were going to, not my team, but they could potentially watch Netflix and just wait for the market to come back to them. No, you got to go after the market and make things happen. Now's when you have to be a valuable source of information for your clients. Now's when you have to be the go-to person to make sure that that you have a business left when this is all said and done. So
Leading from your hospital bed while you're on oxygen, that's great. That's really.
it was bless Tom, because he was trying to do most of the talking because it was hard, but then I get frustrated and start talking. And again, the goal remains the same. It's just how you get there is what you have to change sometimes. But it was interesting.
Right. That's why I saw you on Facebook waving to your mom way up high from afar, right? Because you couldn't.
I still to this day have not been in the same room with her, and I won't.
Wow.
I got the antibody test though, so guys, whoever's watching, you know, that's actually a great test to take. Quest Diagnostics, you just jump online, you book the test, they'll schedule a time for you right then and there. It was $120. You go in, their facility's very clean, very safe. Someone greets you at the door. They keep everybody apart from each other. They drew blood. I was out of there in like 7 minutes. And then 3 days later, I got, you know, my positive antibody test in my email.
Nice.
For me, it feels good because at least I know that I, you know, have antibodies, and, you know, you still can't get a direct answer as to how good that is or not, but it makes me feel at least better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, because one of the things I love about you that I always see is you're always giving back. You're giving back to the community and helping others. Why is that important to you?
That was, again, another thing that I learned early on as a family with our toy drive, as an example. You know, I'd spend a day with my mother shopping while my sister was with my father shopping. We'd swap, get each other all gifts, and then we'd spend a day as a family shopping together to get toys for Child Haven. My dad always wanted us to see, you know, that although we were very fortunate to have our life, and, you know, we definitely had our ups and downs in our life also, but that, you know, there was, no matter how bad it was with us during times, there were those that were going through worse times. And he always wanted to make sure that we were thankful for everything that we had, but you also used our best efforts to try to help others at all times as well. So that's how our toy drive started. When he passed, I wanted to carry that legacy for him, and we've been doing that ever since. And in terms of, you know, helping others in other ways, you know, doing things like this, and you know, like I said, I'm fortunate to have learned and to have had, the assistance that I've had, someone to be there to help me. And I want to make sure I pay those things forward, just like that girl that picked me up on the side of the road when I was trying to hitchhike back into Vegas. It's there's no better feeling than getting the help you need when you need it, other than giving someone the help when they need it. And I truly enjoy it. I love it, and I think that is something that would always make my father proud. And I think that's something that's going to contribute to the legacy that I want to leave behind. And I think it's something that we should all be doing. We're all very fortunate, no matter what life we're living, no matter what we're going through. Again, it could always be worse. So you got to count your blessings and do what you can to help other people.
Definitely. And I think it's even more important now than ever. And just the gratitude is, I think it's critical for us. It's good. What are the goals? What goals do you have, Frank? What's the future like for Frank Napoli? What does that look like?
My goals are to continue to grow my team. I don't have, and when I say grow my team, not in numbers, I've always enjoyed having a small team. My team to me is more like family. I grew up in a family business, and I want my business to always have that same feel. Synergy is very important to me, and I just love what we do in small numbers, or with a small force. So my goal is to grow the team that we have, strengthen the team that we have, and then eventually become a source of information that anybody can attach to. And maybe getting into some coaching down the road. Start at a small scale, which I'm doing now. I have a few people that I am coaching, and I'm probably going to start taking on just a few more. But I want to be able to do it one-on-one. I want to be able to take the time to do it, to make sure that I can actually take, whoever I am working with, their personal situation, their goals, and really get into what I can do to help them grow. And I can't do that in big numbers. I want to do it myself, so that's something that I have in mind, as another way to kind of pay it forward. I don't ever intend on being out of the business. I love what I do, truly. But I want to be able to get to a point where I can give more responsibility to my team, and more people around me, so I can, again, grow our business more and live life a little bit, because that's something that my dad really didn't get a chance to do. So that's another lesson that I learned from him. You have to find that balance. And I think I do that pretty good now, but I want to be able to do it more. And of course, show my mother a life that I want her to enjoy as well.
Nice.
Those are my goals.
Nice. So, what parting words of advice do you have for the agents that are out there? There's a lot of people on this watching it, and we'll stream it after too. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people, and you've been fabulous. You've got some just incredible stories, but what parting words of wisdom do you have for the agents out there, and what should they be doing at this time?
Stay positive. Stay positive, work hard. Don't become a victim during this time, because this isn't a market. This is an event that's happening right now. Okay. And it will be life-changing for you in one way or another. All right. It will either completely take you out of the business if you let something like this affect you, or it'll put you far behind to where you're going to spend the rest of the year playing catch up. Work hard now, keep your head up, educate yourself. I think that is probably one of the biggest things you can do right now. Educate yourself so you can properly educate others, become that source. And just, if you were making 200 calls a day before, make 400 calls a day now. Okay. And if you're making your 400 calls, make your 800. And if you're making 800 calls and you're not getting results, find out how to talk to people the right way. Okay. Evaluate what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and change your model, change your approach. And again, like I mentioned before, if there's anybody that wants help with those things, I'm willing to take an hour of my day and talk to you. No charge. I mean, literally, if you want to have a conversation, I'll look at your business, I'll look at your approach, where are your struggles, and we'll figure out what we can do to get you in feeling better. But now is not the time to be negative. Now is not the time to let the market wash you away. Now is the time where you should not be focusing on how to survive. Now is the time where you should be thriving. Okay, to ensure that your business is not only going to live now, but to be bigger and stronger in the future. and it's 100% possible.
Time to double down, right?
Time to double down.
Time to
Yes.
double down.
It is
It's
Vegas.
good.
Hey, if we can't gamble here, we'll double down here.
That's the only place we can double down now for a while, right? So thank you. You have been magical, and I really appreciate the time that you spent and the giving that you're giving back to the agents out there, because I really do. I think it's going to make a huge impact to people, and you're a fabulous man. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
All right.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.